Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Agents Across the Pond. Now, this is where UK agents and US realtors talk honestly about what works and what doesn't, and everything in between. Now, this isn't a hype podcast. It's simply real conversations about sales, lettings, marketing, and let's be honest, a little bit of therapy for us all that comes with running an agency. My name's Liam.
I'm Danny.
My name's Amanda.
So let's get into it. Obviously, you guys are over in the USA. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourselves, the business setup, how long you've been running?
Yeah, so basically I started doing my real estate license in 2017, became officially licensed in 2018 early, and then I hung my license at the beginning with a brokerage here in the United States called Wycott Realtors, and a year or so later moved on to a different brokerage called United Real Estate, and I've been with them ever since. And then Amanda?
He pulled me, his wife, into it as his teammate, assistant, partner, whatever you want to call me. In 2022, I started my class, and then 2023, I took my tests and passed and all that, and joined United. And it's been cool.
Private. Well, I think we've got a few talking points there, just off some of the keywords that you've already said that aren't really keywords in UK estate agency. So for the listeners out there, we've got to be very clear that realtors are estate agents, but in the US, you operate in a slightly different way than us in the UK. Now, with myself, obviously, you guys have introduced yourself. I'll throw my 10 pence in. So my name's Liam Gretton. I'm based just on the other side of the river from Liverpool. So if you look at a map, we've got the centre of the universe just to the left of it. I've been an estate agent now with EXP for 5 years. I don't know where that time's gone, but before then, I spent 8 years in the British Army until I was medically discharged. And like everyone in the UK industry, I fell into estate agency over a cup of tea with a friend. And ever since, it's been sales, marketing, and just trying to improve that experience of sellers. Now, Danny, you mentioned something about brokerages. Obviously, I partner with EXP, which I do call a brokerage. I understand that setup, but for the listeners out there, they might not know what it is. So, what is a brokerage?
Yeah, so we have thousands of different brokerages across the United States. And I think one of the main things to talk about today is that we're going to be focusing on like what the barriers to entry in real estate are. So a brokerage here is essentially someone that you put your license with. They're the people, it's kind of like another layer of knowledge beyond the person that's just a salesperson. So your first person, the point that you'll reach out to when you are looking to buy a house is an agent. They might not be a broker. It might be someone that you just know, and that agent is affiliated with a brokerage, which is someone that's been in the industry for a long time and has all of the knowledge that these salespeople rely on for other information that they need going through any transaction. And it's also a place where every brokerage has different rules, and they all have different, commission structures. They all have different offices. They're not in the same locations. You could be in one side of the country and they'll have never heard of a brokerage that's in New York versus California. So there's a varying vast amount of brokerages. It's just a house that holds someone's license and like a person that you would report to that helps you stay within all of the licensure guidelines, because we have to do that as realtors in the United States. And we're going to get into that in a little bit and talk about the barriers of entry to get into real estate, how you sort of affiliate yourself with a brokerage, and what that entails. And we'll also talk a little bit about the processes of holding your license and the costs of holding your license and the costs of getting your license as well. So I think that's going to answer some of the questions, or we're going to answer some of the questions. But that's also what I want to relay back to you is like, what is the process for you in the UK? How does it sort of interpret in terms of how you put yourself with a brokerage and sort of as an individual versus with a large name brokerage in the UK?
So, here in the UK, being a part of a brokerage isn't really a thing. So everywhere else in the world, as I see it at the moment, and very much looking at you guys in the US, it's individual agents working under a brand, but you're all self-employed. In the UK, we are very much still in the mode of traditional estate agency where people are employed. So you get paid month in, month out, whether you sell a property or not. Now, to me, when it comes to selling, I think there's a couple of issues with that, just in terms of how much work you're actually going to put in. And over the last kind of 25, 30 years, it's all been about volume. The more volume you've got on the market, the more properties you might be able to sell. But it's all about the experience of a seller. And I think as we move forward, it's 2026. We've got places like Airbnb, and you're going around all sorts of places. People want experiences. And I think it's the same with estate agency in the UK. Now, I partner with EXP. And for people that don't know EXP out there, to me, it is a brokerage. It supplies me with all the tech tools, systems, and support I need to run the business, but at a very low cost. So at the moment, I pay £150 per calendar month, and we have a commission split. So that commission split is 70% to the agent, 30% to EXP, and that is across the board. Now, once you've what we call capped, so essentially you pay £24,000 in commission, which is around about £80,000 turnover. That cap is no more. You, as the agent, keep 100% of your fee, but every year that passes, so for example, I capped back in November. Anything that completes now up until the 1st of March is 100% my commission. From the 1st of March onwards, that then renews. So I'm back to the 70/30 until I cap again. The UK industry is growing with brokerages, and it's definitely got a space out there. There's a lot more personal agents. So EXP in the UK now, 6 years old this year, there's 900 agents. So it's massively growing. In terms of what you said before, Danny, barriers of entry in the UK, we don't need a license. So realistically, without taking into account kind of websites and Google rankings and stuff like that, you can open up an estate agency with £1,000. And what we have to cover are 4 areas of compliance. So data protection, making sure everyone's information is secure; anti-money laundering, making sure that we've got guidance there; property ombudsman. So if someone's got an issue and we can't settle that issue, there's someone who will step in the middle and essentially kind of act as the United Nations between client and the organization providing the service. And then we've also got indemnity insurance. £1,000 all in is that what that cost would set up. But I've always found it interesting. And Amanda, you might be able to answer this. You've recently gone through the process of getting your license in the US. What on earth does that look like? Because to me, I wouldn't know where to start. And more importantly, as an agent on the other side of the pond, could I just go to New Jersey, New York, Texas, wherever, and set the license myself?
Your last question, I think we're not completely sure of. I think you have to be a resident here is what we're thinking. We could always look into that more. But for me to take the test, it felt easier because I had him to go to like answer questions and guide me of like where should I look, what brokerage should I take it with. So I took it with one of the brokerages that offers it for $99, and it was virtual. I was working a full-time job at the time, so it was easy to do the evening class. It was about 3 hours, 3 nights a week.
I think you did 3 hours, maybe 3 or 4 hours. It was still 6 till 10.
6 to 10.
6 to 10, 4 hours.
4 hours, yeah.
Usually ended a little bit early because nobody wanted to be there till 10. But we got a lot of information from the professor during that time, and you have to take a class exam, which you have to pass, which I think you had unlimited chances to take that test. They want you to pass, but
You have 1 year to pass your test.
the state test.
Yeah, the 1 year to pass the state test, right? Which you have unlimited opportunities to pass within that year, and it's around about $45 per attempt.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be failing it too many times because it'll cost you a little bit in the long run. You want to pass as many times as you can, as soon as you can. I think you have to get to 70% to pass as well.
I think
Okay.
70 to 80% to pass. Yeah. Depending on, yeah. And what else did I have to do? Then you have to get fingerprinting and do all of that fun stuff here. And
Why is that?
Like
Well,
background checks.
sorry.
What? Go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, no, it's okay. So I can answer if you want. I mean,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to let you talk a little bit.
No, go ahead.
So sorry. So number one is there's a lot of different variations, right? So in the UK, what you'll find is you guys hold the keys as the broker that's or the agent that is showing a house. But here, we have something called a lockbox, and I can get one and show you in a later episode. But essentially, what that does is it gives all agents access to see properties with their buyers. In America, we have selling agents and buying agents, which is a little bit different to in the UK. And basically, that allows the buyer's agents to access the property through an app, which we call
Super.
Supra, which then essentially they go onto Supra, they put in a request for a showing, and then it gets approved. The reason you need a background check is because they don't want to just give everyone access to people's homes, right? Like they want to protect those people and make sure that we know exactly who's going into the home. So when someone has the app and they sign up for a showing, we know that that person signed up for the showing. Then when they go to the home, they open the lockbox. The lockbox is Bluetooth, connects to your phone, you unlock the home, and essentially that's you getting access to someone's home, right? They obviously want to do these background checks to make sure that everyone that's coming into the home has had the background check for safety purposes and that they can trust all of these people that are going
Mhm.
into people's homes because
I
they
was
have
just
that
about to
access.
say then that there's a lot of trust there.
Yeah.
So here the seller will give us the key, we put it in a lockbox, and it's kept safe. And the only people that get that key is the agent opening the door to let the buyers come in. Now you've highlighted a great point there. In the UK, we don't really have buying agents. They are few and far between. It's a very niche market. And when a buyer is going to purchase a property in the UK, they are going head to head with the estate agent who's doing their job day in, day out. So there's no representation. And I find that's a big difference. But that's a lot of trust to put into someone, even from a seller, just kind of going, Joe Bloggs is coming round to my house today and they've never met the person.
Yeah.
So in my mind, so in our listing agreement, when we work with a seller, they ask, do you want a lockbox on the property or not? So you do have the option as a seller to say, and we've worked with sellers before that say, we want you at every showing because they trust us as their team. And again, like you don't know who these other people are as the seller. As us looking at it, we're like, it's agents who have, done the test, have a background check, have their account with the super key, and you see their name, you see the time they log in, the time they log out. So we see it, but we can also understand from a seller's point of view, especially if it's not a vacant home and you have stuff in the house, wanting to know or have somebody you trust be present. Because during showings, we ask the seller not to be there. So it really depends on the seller and how comfortable they are with it. And, we've had, like I said, we've had to be at showings for, sellers before. And then we have others that they're like, no, let them go. We trust and, they have insurance and all that stuff and whatnot. But yeah,
No, what you're talking about there, Amanda, that's something I've never really. I knew kind of buying agents turned up, but in my mind, it was always you have to sell an agent there because that's a lot of trust just to turn around and go, do you know what? Yeah, he can come round, he can open up. I'm in work, don't worry about it. Just make sure the key's back in the key safe. Is there ever been any stories? Because obviously the US is a huge place, but has there been any stories where there's been rogue agents and they've had access to the property?
That's a great question. I haven't
what do you
heard
mean?
of any like
What do you mean by rogue agent? Like not with a brokerage or something?
More so someone just not acting ethically the way they're meant to when they're in someone else's home.
I mean, we haven't experienced it, but I'm sure it might happen.
I mean, I'm sure there's definitely stories. I've heard stories
Yeah.
from agents before. Most of the stories come around open houses, to be honest with you. When they're doing an open house and like you get
Anybody
the
can
odd
come.
crazy that walks through the door. And they like there's a lot of females within the real estate industry here, and they feel very unsafe sometimes doing open houses on the weekend because of certain
I was
things that
pregnant
happen.
doing open houses 2 years ago, and I was in a neighborhood I felt comfortable in, but and my parents lived right around the corner, but there were moments where you're like, I anybody could walk through this door. Um, so I definitely do. That's probably a whole other topic, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's
But
definitely
but
a
it's
safety
really
thing.
interesting because we've started off with the insight of this is how we set up in terms of the UK. It's £1,000, um, and you can operate as an estate agent. You don't need any qualifications. You don't even need any training. You just
Mhm.
There are some people in the industry who will roll with it.
Yeah.
Where yourselves, you're going through a bit of a course, a crash course as such. You're getting the qualification. You're operating now having that access where you've got key safes and you can act as a buying agent, selling agent, does that give you as realtors a lot of autonomy to operate?
Um, by autonomy and what are
A lot
you?
of freedom?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Like we can free within the scope of things. Like it's just about reaching out to one another and communicating to another agent, and it so like talking to another agent, being like, "Hey, I have a buyer that's interested in the house. Can I go show it? What are the times I can go show it?" A lot of the time, we don't even have to interact with them. We can just go on an app, put in a request for a showing, and then it gets emailed to them immediately, and then they either approve it or don't approve it. And a lot of the time as well in the MLSs, and that's another topic we'll talk about as well in the future, I guess. But in our MLSs, it says like, hey, the seller requests a 24-hour period before you request a showing. So you must request a showing within 24 hours. You can't like just be roaming around on Saturday with your agent and be like, oh, this house is on the market. Let's try the request in for in 15 minutes time. Like they
Yeah.
won't accept those types of things, if you know what I
And
mean.
that's quite fair because, as much as we get it ourselves, when inquiries come through and people like, you take the inquiry and they go, oh, I can view in the next half an hour. Well, listen, let's just bring you back down to earth. I've
Yeah.
got appointments. We've not
People live
scheduled this
there.
into the diary. And a lot of people, because ultimately for sellers, you are letting strangers walk around your house.
Mhm.
You want to tidy up. If you've got kids, that's going to take 2, 3 hours because we know what the toys are like. And I've seen people where they've hidden socks and all sorts in the fridge. And it's like people worry about viewing. They want the house to be like a show home
Yeah.
where, you know, it is. And that's something else we'll cover later down the line. A comment I actually had from a client moving from Atlanta to the Wirral about the standard of properties when people are going to view it in terms of dishes being in the sink. And to me, it's an absolute non-negotiable that we set standards so people are walking through the front door.
Mhm.
But it's interesting that you've got that freedom to operate between agent to agent. How do you find the collaboration with a selling agent? So if you're acting as a buying agent, what does that look like in terms of being able to approach the selling agent when I'm guessing you guys make the offers?
Yeah, yeah. So we try to with everybody. At the end of the market's been crazy over here in the last. I won't say crazy, but the market's been very competitive, to say the least. And homes have been going over asking price. When you win a home for your client, you want to make the transaction as smooth as possible in certain circumstances, but there's certain circumstances as well where you make that first offer, you get an accepted offer, you get under contract here. There's no what we would call gazumping in America. Once you have a contract that's in attorney review and then the attorneys sign their final attorney review documents, that home's under contract and no one can come in and then say, hey, I'm going to give you a better offer. That can't happen. But then once you're in that process of purchasing a home, we do an inspection phase, we do the appraiser for the bank, we do surveys, which is a little bit different. We've talked about this before, but you guys call this whole process a survey. We have different individual aspects to it. So you have your inspector, which will inspect the home, check for oil tanks, checks for any structural issues, any cosmetic issues. They'll look at the plumbing, they'll look at the electrical system, all of those things, and then they'll write their report and bring it back to you. And then that's like another negotiation phase. Now you got a way to you can act however you want to act in these circumstances based on how that inspection report comes back. But depending on how the market is also a way that you have to act and help your client as well because they could be sitting on 15 other offers that are equally as good as yours, but they were nice enough to select yours, right?
Wow.
Based on maybe circumstances, timing, the amount that you're putting down, whatever the different things you're putting into the contract that makes yours look more lucrative. They still have 15 other offers potentially wanting to buy the house. So if you start to become troublesome in the inspection phase. They could be like, listen, we're not going to fix anything. You said you were going to take the house. You said you were going to pay this for the house. You've inspected the house, great, but we don't want to fix any of the issues that you're bringing up. So you can either take the house as it is, we're not fixing it, and move on, or we can cut the contract right here, and I'll just go to my next buyer.
And
That's one.
I was just
Amanda, how long is that process?
I'm a little stuck on what you said earlier, gazumping. I don't even, is
So I can give you
that
a
like
great
a
insight
is
here.
that a
So
term?
yeah, so in the UK, once you've accepted an offer, it then goes to legals, and that legal process in the UK is very, very long. So from offer accepted to you exchanging contracts could be anywhere from a day to three, maybe 4 months. Now, within that three,
Oh
I
my
know
God.
I feel like I caught you off guard with that.
That's ours attorney review, right? Is what he's talking about?
Yeah,
Kind of, yeah.
So ours is like
But he's going
two,
to explain to
one
you.
to 3 days a
Yeah.
month.
sorry, how many days?
So attorney review before you're officially in the contract is usually like 1 to 3 days typically. The longest that we've ever seen it go is
Maybe a
like
week,
is
week and a
maybe
half.
like 7 to 10 days
Wow. Okay, so
before
here,
it's officially under contract, and like the buyer is like, that's my house unless I decide through the inspection process that it's not, I don't want it
Or they
anymore,
can't
or
get them.
they, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
okay, so here it only becomes legally binding that contract where if you withdraw, then that there's penalties. So when you exchange contracts, now that could be, and I'd say on average at the moment, you're looking at anywhere from 12 weeks onwards.
That's wild.
It's wild, yeah. Now, within that period of offer being accepted all the way up to exchange of contracts, if someone makes an offer and the property's marked under offer, so you mentioned MLS before, the prominent one here will be Rightmove, Zoopla on the market. But when it's marked as under offer, a lot of people don't inquire about the properties. But if you inquire and you make an offer, the agent legally has to put that offer to the seller in writing within 24 hours. Now, let's say you've accepted an offer of 500,000 and tomorrow someone comes in and makes an offer of 540,000 and you accept it, that's gazumping because you're now
Mm,
just going with another offer. You're not really giving any
right.
reasons,
Yeah.
and you can just cut one buyer out and go with the next buyer. Now, me personally, I think it's a little bit wrong. We should be ethical. I'm a big fan of something called a committed transaction agreement, very new in the UK, but essentially the day your offer is accepted, it puts both buyer and seller on a level playing field. It
Mm,
ties you both in. That basically says, let's say you're buying off me, Amanda, you've offered me this amount. I've accepted this. I will not entertain anyone else's offer. And if I do, and I go with it, I've got to give you compensation. But if you walk away, you have to give me compensation. So everyone's now having open conversations from the beginning. But yeah, it can be a long, hard slog to the finish line.
mm,
And one of the biggest risk factors as a UK agent that I think we need to manage more is that risk mitigation of people actually starting to get a bit disheartened. It's going on a bit too long. The excitement of buying a home is just out the window, and they're just going, do you know what? I'm going to go and look for another property. And it happens because no one's legally tied in.
Mm.
So it's then about how do we use our sales progression to stay on top of solicitors, make sure that that property is constantly at the front of their mind. Because if we're pestering, and that's probably the best way to put it, I see sales progression as a part of the sale where one, I've got a relationship with the solicitor. If you need me to go and chase something, I will do it for you because if we get it done, we're all moving
mm.
forward and we all get paid faster.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you know, that's why we do this job. We
Mm.
want to get paid. There's no beating around the bush there. As much as we love it, we don't do it out of the kindness of our heart. We get paid at the end of it. So we have to keep moving that chain forward. Some solicitors will speak to you, others won't. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
I
But
think
yeah,
so from the term as well, because we've been through this experience before, you can still get gazumped, using the word from England. Ultimately, here that only happens in the attorney review phase. Once you've got a contract, which is like I said, it's a window of time. It's like a 3-day time period that someone could theoretically come in and offer a better offer. But like you said, we hold the ethical standard to say, like, with our clients, what we try and say is if you get a better offer that comes through the door, and this is how we try to operate. We say to our clients, like, you've accepted an offer, especially in the market over the last 5 years. It's been super hard and competitive for buyers to get homes. And when you give them that euphoric feeling of, yes, I've got an accepted offer, it's like and even as an agent, giving that information to someone is just really nice. You know what I mean? But then when a couple of days later they're in a attorney review and someone's come in and put a better offer in, and then they accept that offer and walk away and just go, oh yeah, off into the sunset. You unlucky guys. It's kind of really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I talk about to my sellers and my clients is I don't like to do that. What I always say is listen, if we do get a better offer in this time period whilst you're in attorney review, what I always ask you to do is say that this is what the offer is. If you're willing to match the offer, we'll stick with you guys, and at least give the opportunity back to the buyer that you accepted an offer with originally, because there's some value, right, in them putting the best offer in a time period that you maybe stay. Because we do something when we get multiple offers called best and final offer. When we get
I
those
know.
multiple offer
But
situations.
I'm going to jump in there, Dan, because best and final offer, we use that here. However, I'll cover it in the next episode. I think we need to repurpose how we're positioning that offer for clients, because exactly what you're mentioning there, I'm a huge believer that this job isn't sales. It's all about helping people onto the next chapter of their lives, whether that be first time buyers, people downsizing, people have passed away, and children are now inheriting the property and they've got to deal with all this paperwork. There's so many different factors, people getting divorced. We
Mhm.
are there as therapists, guidance. There's so much that we've got to do in addition to, and it's just, we've just got to be at the end of the phone for someone to get stuff off their chest. Whether it's, I find 9 times out of 10, it's not actually targeted at us when people are trying to get it off the chest. There's normally external factors going on, but you nailed it there. It's about helping people onto that next part of their life.
Mhm.
And when it comes to putting offers forward, realistically, buyer and seller are not friends. And my job in the UK is to get my seller the most amount of money as possible. But I've also got to remember that there's a lot of emotions involved with moving home, a lot. So sometimes we do have to bring it down to a logical setting and kind of go, listen, Danny, Amanda, I know you love this property, but do you want to pay this amount for it? Or are you overpaying?
Mhm.
Do you want to exploit someone in this position?
Yeah.
I personally think it's not right.
That's why we have buyers agencies, so that the buyers are protected and they're not exploited in these situations. They get protection from the buyers agents. We also have attorneys on both sides that are protecting people's interests.
Yeah.
But ultimately, when we walk through a home, we have the experience of looking at the home. I mean, I've personally done flips, which, are homes that are run down. We purchase them, we fix them up, and we sell them for a profit, essentially. Sorry, one second. Can you just hit that for us? Yeah, and when we do that, we're looking the property. I'm looking at property condition all the time, so I know when I go take my buyers around homes, like where there are issues, even before we've put an offer in on a house. I have an idea as well. Over here, like it's very common for people to open walls up. Well, I know whether there's a structural beam that means that they can't move this wall or open a wall. And that's like a little bit of valuable insight to people. But also I have the idea of, okay, I'm walking in, there's a hot water heater and a furnace. Let's look at when these things were installed, because they have tags and permits on them that says, hey, it was installed in 2018. Well, hot water heaters last about 8 to 10 years over here. So you're going to be looking at another hot water heater. That's around about $1,800 to $2,000 to install a new hot water heater. And I can,
Education.
yeah, I can give that information whilst we're going to showings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And help through that process. That's the great thing about buyer's agency that often goes underlooked. You know what I mean? A lot of people think like we're just people who open doors to homes. Well, we give a lot of information, and we supply people and protect people from making the bad decisions, and also then not even just that it's a bad decision, but we give them insight into knowing like, okay, is that something that I want to take on? Because taking a property on is maintenance, it's looking after a home, it's all those potential fees that come along the way, as well as the fact of learning that property is also an investment route, right? Too, but it's understanding what you're getting yourself into on the first one. I do want to circle back though, if I might, because the main part of this episode that we're talking about is barriers to entry, right? And I wanted to go back and talk a little bit about the barriers to entry that we were talking about. So the 75-hour class that we talked about, we also got the fingerprinting that you need to do. You've also got to have your you got to select your brokerage, and then that obviously ties into all the differences with the commission. But then there's also, once you've got your license and you've associated yourself with a brokerage, that's not the end of your fees when it comes to being a realtor here. So on average, I think, per agent, they must be spending around about $2,000 a year just to have your license. We have to be a part of the National Association of Realtors, which is basically, a group that is saying, these are the ethics standards that we want all agents to meet, and we want you to be a part of our membership. And that fee is around about $500 to $575 a year per agent.
We have the same thing with Property Mark, and I think it's really beneficial for people to go and sit in these exams, get the Property Mark qualification, because it sets the standard of what we should be. And when you've got such a low entry into the industry,
I know.
then
I think
yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think a lot of people, even just remembering from the class, it was virtual, right? That I went to. I know you went to in-person class, which I think people might take a little bit more seriously than doing it virtually like I did. There were maybe 40 people in my class, and even the professor was kind of like, by the end of the semester, there's going to be way less of you, and some of you aren't going to take the test, some of you aren't going to pass the test. Once you kind of realize what it takes, and not just financially, but also the effort of like putting the time and energy into the profession and doing it every day.
A big part
Amanda,
of it.
sorry, Dan. Amanda, you've recently I say recently, you've recently got your realtor license. Just covering over what Danny was talking about there, is it, when you're sitting these exams, is it very much focused on being a selling agent, or is the buying agent? Because Danny mentioned about, being able to advise clients. Is that covered within the course? Or is that
I'm
something you
trying to
learn as you
recall.
boots on the ground?
The questions are very test-like versus real life situation,
Mm.
I would say, from what I remember.
Yeah, I can add value
Or from a
because I remember
compliance
it
point of view?
extreme. I mean, I remember it a lot. Like,
I
so it's
did, and
multiple
then
choice.
I went on with
It's
my life.
it's multiple choice questions, right? And so everything is about the legal side of it. Nothing is about the business side of it. So you have like the legal side, like what are riparian rights? What is an easement? What do these things mean? How do they affect the person who's buying a property that has an easement? What's a deed? What's this? What's the other? Right? Everything in class that you go to really only affects like the legal side of real estate. It has absolutely nothing to do with how you deal with clients,
Contracts.
apart from ethics, right?
Yeah.
It has the ethics side of the class, but apart from that, it's all about the contracts that you get to understand. When you walk out of there, you understand how to act in the real estate industry, but you don't know how to interact with clientele, how to get clients,
How to write an offer up.
how to write an offer up. Like all of those things are not done. That's where your agency comes in, and why associating yourself with a brokerage that's going to help you learn all that stuff is pivotal. As well as
In
that, we have teams, like we're a real estate team, so we are okay with having other agents come on, and I'm happy to educate agents and teach them and get them through this. I always call it like imposter syndrome, if you know what I mean.
So,
Um,
Danny, when you were talking about brokerages, then, and obviously, I just so the listeners know, we've kind of got a 4 minute warning on this recording.
yeah.
So in the UK, we have national estate agencies, and then we've got independent, traditional. We've got brokerages like EXP. How does the brokerage setup work in the US? Do you have like national US based brokerages that a lot of entry level agents will go to? Then you've got your very small, localized, super hyper local independent brokerages. Because being across the pond as
Yeah.
such, I've always looked at it and gone, okay, well, you've got Keller Williams, you've got EXP, you've got United Realty. Everyone must be under those three brands.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, you have hyper local, like you'd mentioned, but they all have to adhere to the same rules. Like, for example, I could today, still only a salesperson within a brokerage, but I could go and do more schooling, which would be another like 75 to, no, it's a 150-hour course, sorry, to do my brokerage license. And then I could open my own brokerage. And then it's about like growing the brokerage and trying to franchise and go across the whole of the United States if possible, right? Like if you look at a Wycott Realtors, for example, they started 50 odd years ago. They were just one office. Now they're thousands of offices across the entire country. It starts at something small and then sometimes it can grow into something huge like any other business. But a lot of people and a lot of the businesses that are smaller businesses are hyper local and stick to the areas. However, those large businesses, they still have flooded all of these areas. You've got them all everywhere, and most people do position themselves in those large brokerages because they have the training to help them kickstart their businesses, help them understand the contracts and stuff like that. But again, I think it's all about marrying. You need to find the right person. And when you have a large business, they never always hire everyone's, not every hire that they make is perfect. Like for me, for example, when I was at Wycott, I loved everyone there, but I just felt like the people who were my mentors or my first mentor was not really on top of me, if you know what I mean. And
Okay.
that didn't help me get through that imposter syndrome. That's one of the big things for me too, is like helping other agents get through that like phase of I feel like I've started this business, and if I was in front of someone, I don't feel confident. I feel nervous, like speaking to sellers, you know what I mean? And that's one of the big things that I want to sort of help other agents with within our team.
I think it's a big thing when you're going through that early process of passing the exam and figuring out, like for me at least, he was with United when I graduated. And I basically said, are we sure we want to be with United? And I was looking into other brokerages to see if that would
Like
align
EXP.
better. Yeah, I looked at EXP, I looked at Real Compass, like a bunch of other places, and kind of brought it to him as like, is this something we should consider? Because I think you go into it like you're saying, you see the name Weichert, Keller Williams, Coldwell Banker, like all those bigger brokerages, and you're kind of like, that's my option, and you don't know that there's other routes to take or other brokerages that you could look into and research that might align better with what you need.
Yeah, well, guys, obviously we're kind of looking at finishing up now. I've actually found this really interesting. I cannot believe how much trust there is within kind of leaving key safes and stuff like that. Now, for the listeners out there, we really hope that you've actually taken a bit of insight from the conversation we've had today. We're going to be back in a week or two. And we'll carry on the conversation, US versus UK. What I'm going to ask, and what Danny and Amanda don't know, is obviously we want you to subscribe, like the podcast, but most importantly, go and leave your best estate agency or realty joke in the comment section, and we'll